Welcome to welcome to FraudExpose. My name is Lori Maddock, and today I'm going to be speaking with a couple of cyber fraud experts. Win, why don't you start? I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your company.
Hi, my name is Win Win. I'm a founder of Cyber Armor, where we focus in the dark web.
Okay, and Jared, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, Jared Zarmbinski here. I'm a fraud investigator and financial crimes investigator, currently with USAA, but I've also worked in cross-channel fraud and online fraud prevention and detection for JP Morgan Chase. Of course, the views expressed here are my own and not affiliated with my current or former employer.
Right, as for us all. So in talking about fraud, fraud is so rampant. I don't remember ever years ago having to hear as much as we do today. Why is it so easy for fraudsters to commit cyber fraud? I mean, they always seem to be a step ahead of people like you, the good people.
Well, I guess the easy answer to that would be that, it's just a constantly evolving landscape. And what I mean by that is both the fraudsters and the fraud fighters are constantly having to try to learn and unlearn and relearn tactics of each other's and constantly try to stay one step ahead. And that natural competition that creates kind of just evolves the landscape in a very rapid manner like that. And through more advancements in technology and just the further development of the internet and social media, various platforms thereof, there's just so many more opportunities to commit fraud, to utilize or otherwise harness the power of the internet, bot networks, AI, and so forth in order to commit fraud.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stories I read in the news, I think to myself, what kind of person thinks they're going to get away with what they're doing? Like they don't think they're ever going to get caught. And nowadays, that's with everything, when it comes to fraud. So in the United States, are fraud experts here better at catching uh, fraudsters, than investigators in other countries? Is it better? Are like the people here smarter than in other countries? Is it pretty much equal? I mean, certain countries we know, like Nigeria, where a lot of the fraudsters are, but the people, the investigators, the police, whoever it is, the FBI, in catching them, is there anyone who is maybe smarter and more up to date, or do they share resources across the world to try to close down, fraudsters?
Sure. Well, I mean, as far as who's the best, I would say all of them are equal contributors to the kind of global landscape that we're dealing with in fraud. And that's not to say that there aren't obvious differences between countries and amongst countries and amongst legal bodies within those countries and that govern this kind of landscape. But I would say that to answer your question, as far as the information sharing goes, yeah, absolutely. We partner with all kinds of law enforcement, all kinds of other financial institutions. All of them really do, and this extends across borders and jurisdictions. Of course, lots of legalities come into play as far as jurisdiction goes with when it comes to prosecution. But as far as the law enforcement aspect and the investigation aspect of what goes on. I would say that everybody's pretty well equipped. There's experts of various levels in various concentrations and specialties in all countries. And lots of communities that have grown over the past several years, especially over the internet. They kind of connect everybody together as well. I would say everybody plays an important role. That being said, there aren't, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there are differences, though, to kind of a counterpoint of that to your question
Okay.
about who's better. I mean, there's certain countries and certain jurisdictions where there's not enough laws in place, or the laws aren't as comprehensive as they are in the United States. The United States and the UK and the Eurozone probably have some of the most comprehensive laws and financial institution and money services business regulations in place that require reporting and require constant surveillance and information sharing to be open like that. And this isn't necessarily adopted in every single country around the globe. This is still kind of something that's starting to expand, and as more countries and more people grow aware of this continuing and growing problem, you know, we're hopeful that more countries start kind of looking at those host nations or those host groups of nations such as the Eurozone, the UK and US as just examples of how they can maybe start adopting their own anti-money laundering and anti-fraud programs.
I got you. Let me ask you both a question. So with artificial intelligence now being able to, from what I'm reading, make fraud easier for the criminals to do, now for the investigators, are investigators then using artificial intelligence to combat back?
Well, I don't know. Do you want me to answer first? I guess.
Sure, I asked those tough questions. Yep.
So I guess you know, the problem that comes to mind with a lot of us, I think, with AI and fraud is the you know, the way that voice cloning can sound so similar to you know, someone's daughter in distress, as her voice is sampled from various Instagram or social media postings that she herself has maybe uploaded to the internet. You know, in theory, a bad actor could then, you know, compile those and create an AI clone of her voice as, you know, being held captive and held for ransom in a situation like that. And all they have to do is press play and play these sample recordings, you know, when the person wants to hear that their loved one's, you know, still alive, and
Right.
as leverage to try to leverage ransom payments. You know, and then the other aspect of your question, as far as what financial institutions are doing, you know, voice recognition technology has been widely deployed amongst I would say the larger financial institutions for a good several years now. Usually in different aspects, and usually, you know, when that's opted in by the consumer, by the customer, by the client. But what I've noticed that some fraud groups will do is they'll use that same, you know, voice biometric, you know, voice pattern recognition
Mhm.
technology as AI is continuing to develop currently as we speak. And they'll use that as a way to match voices with customers. In most contexts, we've probably experienced something like that in a two-factor authentication kind of form when you're logging in
Yes.
to your customer profile at whatever institution. And some of that same technology I've heard is being looked at and further developed, but also in some instances actively deployed by fraud units as a way to make sure that they're authenticating the true customer, or to tell the difference between the two. And as the bad actors continuously use AI to try to get that real person's voice, you know, I use voice comparisons in fraud investigations all the time. Most of us do, you know, when we listen to recorded conversations, as is customary in our work. And you can really easily tell the difference in most situations of account takeover and so forth, but that might not be the
Right.
case. We continue to see this technology evolve, and so that's why it's important that a lot of institutions try to harness that existing technology, as it's already been implemented for two-factor authentication and convenience, and just recognizing your voice and authenticating your profile, to also trying to recognize the choices of words, the patterns of speech, not just the sound of voice, but really, you know, people talk in a certain way. You might have heard me
Cadence.
some of the same terms a couple of times interchangeably, and that's because we all kind of have different ways that we talk, different patterns. It's
Right.
the sentence recognition, you know, and the patterns within the types of words being used in certain sequences and repetitively also is part of that. So it really is a pretty high tech technology for sure.
Well, that's good to know. I know that Wynn and I have spoken about voice cloning before, and I have a couple of banks that use voice print. They'll say, "Thank you for using voice print." And my husband and I had a situation where we had to change all of our account numbers because of potential fraud. And that's the first thing, you know, the guy goes, "Thank you for using voice print." And I said, "You do know that they can clone voices now, right?" And the guy's like, "Really?" I mean, he had no idea that that was even possible. But I understand what you're saying. It's got to be a hard technology. I mean, I'm a musician, so to me, I hear people's voices as a musical instrument, so to speak. And everybody has their own style, is kind of what you're saying when you do the investigations or if you have to line things up. Let me ask you both the same question, but I'll ask Wynn first. What made you want to become a cybercrime or fraud expert? What brought you into the field?
Um, for me, I always wanna help people. So security has always been a passion of mine. Looking into the dark web, looking at how criminals do things, and just want to help people because yeah, there's a lot of people still being a victims of fraud, being a victim of cybercrime. So yeah, a little,
Yeah,
you can do. We have to do as much as we can to make the world a better place. So.
gotcha. Okay, Jared, how about you? What made you get into becoming, a fraud, an investigator for fraud?
Sure. Well, I mean, kind of the same answer in a nutshell that Glenn just gave. I mean, really, there is a moral aspect to it, a moralistic aspect. I also grew up in a musical household and tried to make it in music earlier on in my career. And when that didn't pan out, I, started looking at some different career options. But during my, career progression, you know, there was a lot of relationships that came and went. Some things weren't really as great as they looked like they were, at first, as far as opportunities in the entertainment industry. And what I realized is there was a lot of, and not to throw that industry under the bus, but there's just in any kind of culture, subculture of various group of society. Or industry thereof, there can be some bad elements that are using, very specific to exploit and take advantage of people. And I noticed a lot of that. And there were times where I even myself, at one point, I got held up at gunpoint for my MacBook and my drum machine by
Oh my
some just
gosh.
random people that came up to me and a friend of mine as we were just kind of jamming out recording. And they were just like, "Hey, that's nice. We're going to take that." And and having things like that happen to me really made me, kind of want to try to pursue a career where I could try to fight against that kind of criminal element. And when I got into banking, I had no idea there were so many opportunities as it related to loss prevention, risk operations, risk management. And that's kind of how I eventually ended up finding my way into it. Really, it was just trying to find a solid gig after,
Yeah.
being as a musician didn't really pan out. There's no 401k or health benefits or, all that. So
No,
that was
no.
part
I
of
mean,
it, I was trying
yeah,
to, but I didn't want to just get an accounting degree to do spreadsheets all day for some company. What I really wanted to do was fight the bad guys, like Gwen's saying, and that's really something that brings me a lot of pride in what I do, and is really a passionate, animating feature behind what I do for sure.
yeah, I can understand. I mean, I am a musician also. I do have some musician friends that actually do make a living at it, but even the famous ones will say, we're not rich. They seem to live longer because they're happy playing the music, but they're not making a lot of money. But I think the commonality between being a musician and doing the kind of work you guys are doing is that both are puzzles. Music is a puzzle. You have to solve the puzzle, be able to read the notes, understand the rhythm, put all the parts together in order to get that song. And I think it's kind of the same thing. I'm a credit consultant and consumer advocate. So, people will come to me, and I'm not an attorney, but people will come to me with their problems and say, how can I solve this problem? After I give them my disclaimer, I tell them, okay, well, if it happened to me, these are maybe the three things that I would try to do, because you have to look at how can you put that puzzle together to solve that problem. But I'm sure with cyber fraud, it's probably a lot harder because I learned from Win all about VPNs and the dark web, and how things are hidden and you can't catch the bad guys, and the world has just gone crazy with that. But I think the puzzle factors, you probably like putting together that puzzle and solving that crime, just like a musician likes, playing music and making it into a song. Um, let me ask you
You definitely
guys.
have to be creative for sure in many instances.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you recommend for people to do or not do to avoid fraud? I mean, there's so much fraud. Maybe give me some red flags, because I know that, I've learned from doing this show to the point where I actually took my banking apps off of my phone because when really scared me. And I thought, and I have had it where somebody was actually in my phone and I had to do a hard reset. I never want to do that again. But I mean, I'm at the point now where if I send a piece of mail, I scotch tape back because the post office, they're getting held up, their trucks are getting held up, their people are stealing, you read stories all the time. What advice would you give to people? Because for me, it's gut instinct, but older people especially, they don't have that. They will click on those links and they will do those things, and they don't really, if they don't have family to help them, younger family, and they're older, I think that's where the criminals go because the older people, well, they might have more money, but they're alone. If they could find out the person's alone and then that person gets scammed, and a lot of the banks are saying, "Hey, you gave permission." Even if the phone number was spoofed, there's no real way nowadays to tell. I mean, for me, if I don't know who's calling, I generally don't answer the phone. And if they claim to be from a company, I go to my real list of company numbers and I check it or I reverse Google it. But do you have any other suggestions for people that are listening to the show as far as red flags?
Sure. Well, I love the way you phrased the question, gave several examples in there yourself already, and yeah, it just that totally gives plenty of things to my mind to talk about. Yeah, as far as the Googling thing goes, I think in the reverse Googling and all of that, that can be a really dangerous rabbit hole to go down because there's a lot of phishing sites, as Gwen's pointed out. I can't tell you how many times I've had people get scammed by trying to call find a customer service number, and we all know the game of trying to play the IVR system to get a hold of a real person, and yeah, I'm not quite up there in age myself, but even I like to talk to a regular person. If I'm dealing with something
Right,
important, I want to make sure that my issue is being addressed properly within that organization, that company I do business with, and so I can understand how that's absolutely a tactic that to your point, fraudsters do exploit. They know that older folks are going to kind of just follow, the breadcrumbs. They're going to kind of just, follow the instructions of the email chain of the phone number, that they call. And unfortunately, they do exploit that a lot. As far as ways to avoid that, yeah, just I mean, you might not have to go to the extreme, right, of deleting your banking apps. I mean, hopefully you won't have to go through another hard reset situation like that again, because that is unfortunately when it gets to that level, you kind of have to, adopt those
right,
challenges and start over from scratch. But usually, trying to stop it before it gets to that point is quite feasible, and that's advisable, more advisable to try to do that. And you can do that by number one, just trying to be really certain of the source of the email or the phone call or whatnot. Make sure you double, triple, quadruple check that email URL. Make sure that that really is the URL, the email, the actual web address of that company, whether it's the United States Postal Service or FedEx or Apple or Amazon or PayPal or whatever it is. Just make sure that you are looking at something that does have a verifiable source in terms of that. Lots of spelling errors. I mean, a lot of these,
yeah,
fraudsters, not all of them go to the lengths of spoofing, like every phone number that they use in the process or covering their tracks so much. There are ones that are smart and that do that and then use VPNs, Tor, they use these things to obfuscate their geographic location and so forth and to cover their tracks. But not every fraudster out there. There's tiers, right? There's layers to that business and industry and the
right,
professionalism in that group of people, just like there's in every group and industry. And so for the most part, you can recognize things by some spelling errors that they were in a hurry, they kind of overlooked, they didn't really proofread their work on the phishing email, they just dragged and dropped your company's clip art logo and put it on there, and they shot it off to however many millions of email addresses they've stolen off the internet or however. And so recognizing like, hey, this doesn't quite look like a real official email, taking your time to really look for those minor details. I know that might seem like a little tedious to a lot of folks, but it's really important to take that seriously, especially if you just have even just like a shadow of a doubt that that might not
Yep.
be an authentic email, and you just have a weird feeling. Trust your gut with that stuff, because sometimes it's more accurate than you realize, and usually you only find out when it's too late. Another thing with phone numbers, just don't give your personal information out to anyone. Not answering phone calls like that you don't recognize at all typically is a good idea, and
Right.
kind of actually ties back into the whole AI thing because and I'll admit, as a fraud fighter, I get scam calls all the time too, just like anyone else does. Sometimes dozens of them in a day, like any of us do, right? Especially nowadays, right? Like people have been out there harvesting these phone numbers and selling them and reselling them, and they've been out there so many times now. And so it's just kind of almost like an inevitable fact of life that we just accept, now in the year of 2024. But
Right.
having said that, like, people will call you and they'll say, "Oh, we're from this debt collection." They'll know that you have a debt, or they'll know that you have a student loan debt, or they'll know that you have, this kind of car situation going on, or whatever, or credit situation, or they'll not know anything at all and they'll just pitch something random to you. I've made the mistake of occasionally talking to them like, "Well, hey, like, are you a victim of human trafficking? Are you in one of these call centers? Like
Right.
scams, should I call the police to help you, or are you in distress?" And usually they hang up on me at that point. And I try not to answer all of them. Sometimes like I'll have a little bit of fun with them, but it is a good idea to probably just not answer, because to your point with the AI stuff, that might be an opportunity where they're already recording you. And if you answer the phone at all, they could be recording you hypothetically, or just trying to see if it is a real number that someone will answer. Cool, good to know. We'll put that in the good pile of people we can call back later with a more specific scam or something like that. So generally just, using those kinds of precautions like you yourself outlined, just kind of having that,
Right.
that kind of general wariness is a good way to go about it. And depending on the scam type, of course, there's lots of other red flags, depending on the scam type that we could discuss as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. Edwin knows this story, but my husband got a scam call from his credit card company. It's one of the big ones, and he always has everything on speakerphone. And I kind of like walked towards the room. I ran into the room because I heard him dial. And when it connected, okay, so when it connects to a bank, it should be an automated system. Welcome to bank, whatever, ABC, and for this, press this. Right. Instead, it went directly to a person. So I ran into the room, and I'm like, "Scam, scam, stop, get off the phone." And yeah, the person that he spoke to, he did not give any information whatsoever. This guy already had all of his information, on the he called him up basically and had all of his information already and said, "Okay, give me an hour and I'll call you back so I can take care of these fraudulent charges." So this is my favorite story. So an hour later, when the guy called back, because my husband called the real company, and of course it turned out it was a fraud. I said, "Give me the phone." And the guy got on the phone with me, and he said, "Can I speak to Mr. Maddock?" And I said, "Well, this is Lori Maddock, and you're live on the radio, and we are talking tonight about people who scam other people. And I'd like to know, how do you feel about trying to scam Mr. Maddock?" And the guy actually he was speechless. He couldn't say anything. And he's like, "What?" I go, "You're live on the air. We're on the radio. Why are so if you have a good
What do you have to
comeback."
say for yourself? Like,
Yeah, it was
on behalf of
the other thing
scammers everywhere, what do you
that
got?
that's it. And I mean, I'm in Florida, so it's a two-party consent law. So I think also, if you say to someone and you're not sure, and you say, "Hey, I am going to be," and I do this, "I am going to be recording this call as well so that we don't have any misunderstandings." If they hang up right away, it's a problem and you can block the call. But I've been close. I pressed on a sponsored listing number for PayPal that came up on my phone once, and same thing. A guy answered with a foreign accent, and in my head, I'm going, "What's wrong? There's something wrong with this call." And I'm realizing, If it was PayPal, it would have said, you know, welcome to PayPal for whatever, press one. Nope. And the guy again, he already had my information. He knew how much money was in my PayPal account. I hung up that phone so fast, changed my passwords, called PayPal. But you know, I guess my last question to both of you again is, what do you foresee in the future regarding cyber fraud, both positive and negative?
Well, I guess I'll answer first. Yeah, so it sounds like your husband was almost a victim of a
Yes.
thank God of an imposter scam where they're really actually they like you said they already have a little bit of information. They know you are a client of this company. They can then kind of just pretend to be a representative of that company and kind of talk their way into getting more information. But you're
Right.
absolutely right. The lack of you have to realize it's such a vast undertaking creating these call centers that these companies use and having the IVRs and all that automation implemented like that on such a wide scale. The lack of that infrastructure like is what you pointed out. It just goes straight to a live person. There's no nice hold music or this transfer
Yeah.
and this transitional phase that's automated. It's just, oh, you just go to somebody and it's like they just picked up on their phone, like, on their private cell phone, and so just being aware of things like that is also just really, really key. And I just wanted to touch on that as well. As far as the evolving landscape and the way it looks like it's going, moving forward, I think everything, just to summarize what we've talked about, from, since we got together today, just being aware of those red flags, being aware to follow your gut, kind of trust your gut with that stuff, taking the time it takes to triple, quadruple check the URLs, the phone numbers, really, really pay attention to the details of those kinds of things. And, because of the way technology is going with AI and voice cloning and all of that, it's something to just be extra vigilant of. Um, you know, try to avoid answering phones. They'll leave a message, if it's really that important, right? They'll leave a message is
Right.
something that I always tell myself just to kind of remind myself. If they're just calling you random area codes, especially like sequentially within a short period of time, it's just like, okay, they're
Yes.
just going down a list, obviously. And just, pattern recognition like that is part of what we in the industry as professionals utilize every day to try to find the people responsible for this. And even the victims or would-be victims themselves can use those same types of skills and develop those same types of skills of being aware of those patterns, those red flags, knowing, hey, I should take the extra step and actually call the company, right? By calling the number on the back of my card or some paperwork that I know came from the
Right.
card company like your husband did. And that's what you would exactly want to do. That gave him obviously the tip off because these imposter people, what they'll do, because he told him he'd call back in some time, was to replace a credit card, was so that they could go in and actually have a card replaced, probably to an alternate address on some other part of the country or wherever, and things of that nature. And they
Right.
take advantage of exploiting those same ways that regular customer service people talk to really convince and make the person feel like they're talking to a representative of the company.
Yes.
Long as you don't allow yourself to even get that far in down the line into the trap, then that's usually the best way to try to get out of it.
Yeah, one of the things too, I mean, coming from credit world, is I tell people all the time, put security freezes on your accounts, which makes it much more difficult to open up credit
Right. If you're
in
not going to be buying
their
anything
name.
major, if you're not going to make any major purchases, or especially if
Yeah,
if you're retired living on fixed income, you already got what you need, you have your lines of credit already, you're good. Yeah, that's totally something
lock it
to
down.
consider. Like, why not?
Right, they can lock down, their a lot of their social media as well. I think that's important because, it's funny if I open up my Facebook, for example, because mine is shut down and private. So if someone wants to befriend me, I have to call them on the phone and say, "Okay, do it now, because if I leave it open too long, all of a sudden, all of these people who I don't know and have no one in common with, they're trying to get into my account right away. And I actually, as even with a closed account, I have had people get through Messenger, usually from Afghanistan, and they have no friends. That's already a hint. Same thing with Instagram. People that want to friend me, I look at the profile, and if it says they have 0 posts, then to me, that's a sign that they're probably not there for a good reason. Wynn, do you have anything to add to any of this?
Yeah, I think the landscape, the threat landscape is going to be increased a lot over time, as you've seen. There's a lot of breaches recently, like the United Healthcare, the AT&T. More and more people start using social media like Facebook, Instagram, right? So it's a lot of information that the cyber criminal gonna leverage to attacking, right? To try to scam and defraud the people. So yeah, try to understand and just be a little bit paranoid, a little bit
Yeah,
like Charles said, a little
I'm
bit.
A
already
healthy
there.
amount of paranoia. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
I mean, like for me, I like you, I don't answer my phone. If it's important, they're gonna leave my a voicemail, right? So
Voicemail.
I would call back. If I receive an email that I don't expect, I don't even care about it. It's gonna go in trash.
Right.
So those type of hygiene is, I think, is gonna improve your protection a little bit better, and stay away from Facebook, right? It's a lot of scammers is on Facebook
Yes,
target, all the victims, all the people over there. So try to don't talk to people you don't know.
right,
Just
right. I get that on
increase
Facebook
your habit
Marketplace
of
if I'm Yeah,
yeah.
Facebook Marketplace, if I'm selling something, I go right to their profile. I see if it's locked up, if they have no friends, things like that, and I just block them. But it's kind of a sad world because it used to be mostly good people, and now you have to assume every phone call, every text, every email, every letter is a scam. And it makes it a little nerve-wracking because some of them actually do sound real or do look real without real people realizing that they can spoof it. And that's why a lot of times the banks don't want to give the people the money back if they've been scammed, unless they end up calling the local TV news investigator, because that's a bad PR move. It's going to embarrass that particular bank. But I want to thank you guys. I mean, it's extremely educational for me, and I like your word paranoid because yes, it's made me a little bit, more paranoid or more aware in this case.
well, to bring it back
It's
to
made,
the first thing that you had
yeah,
said, there's just so much information now. Now there's just so much out there, and with technology advancing as rapidly as it is, that's part of why, these people think they can get away with it, to your point earlier. That's part of why it's going
right.
to be so much more prevalent now moving forward, is because of that abundance of information in the information age like that.
Yeah, I think gut instinct. That's what I always tell people. If you have to think for one split second that something is not right, you're right. It's kind of like when you used to take a test in school and you go to choose answer A, but you choose answer B, and the answer was really answer A. The
Yeah,
answer A
you
was your
typed
gut
it out
instinct,
yourself.
right? And then you switched it. So go with your gut instinct.
You're the best person that would know, you're the best person. You have the most to risk at that point. Whether it's financial or emotional or otherwise, potentially becoming a victim of one of these horrible things. So, definitely, just definitely play it close to the chest when it comes to that stuff.
Yes, I want to thank you guys both, Jared. I hope you'll join us again another time for another show.
Yeah,
And we'll see you again. Yeah, we'll see you again soon on Fraud Expose.
Thank you.